Hello YouTube. Today I'm going to be doing a video called 3 Openings Better Than the Stafford Gambit. And before we go any further, if you like this content, please go ahead and subscribe to my channel. Okay, so for starters, let's talk about what the Stafford Gambit is and why it's so appealing to amateur players. So after e4, e5, the Stafford Gambit happens in the Petrov's opening, and black plays knight c6, dc6. Now, the reason this opening is appealing, I guess there's a number of reasons it's appealing. Number one, we have a free development of our pieces. Our pieces can all get out. And number two, the plan is really obvious and really straightforward. We're going to play bishop c5, h5, knight g4, and then our queen is either going to go to d4, h4, d6, just basically to attack this king. And we're basically playing for tricks, traps, and we're playing for checkmate. And all of that's really appealing. Another thing that's really appealing, of course, about the Stafford Gambit is it's an opening that we can get to, right? So if your opponent plays e4, e5, and they play knight f3, there's a really good chance that you're going to get to play your Stafford, right? After knight f6, if you play the Petrovs and they play knight takes e5 and you play knight c6, you're in there. You've played the Stafford. So it's an opening that you can get to. You don't have to have a ton of preparation. Like, you don't have to study all these different sidelines and all these variations. You get freedom of development, you get a simple plan to follow, and you get a lot of tricks and you get a lot of traps. Those are all the appealing things. Now, my argument against the Stafford Gambit is chess is a big game. There's a lot of openings in chess. There's a lot of variations in chess. There's a lot of different ways to approach chess. I like to be an aggressive player too. I think a lot of players like to be an aggressive player. They like to be aggressive. They like to trick their opponents. They like to set up traps. They like to have those potentials to get those quick wins early in the game, to get those fast victories, especially in tournaments. It's really nice. If you can knock a couple players out in the first 10 moves, you've got a much easier tournament to play. What I don't like about the Stafford is the Stafford Gambit is not a fundamentally sound opening. Right? And what I mean by that is you're giving up a center pawn, and you're getting some compensation for that center pawn on a very real level. You're getting some development, you're getting some easy piece placement. That's worth something, right? But it's not enough to compensate for the center pawn, or it shouldn't be. So when you play an opening that's not fundamentally sound, there's no guarantee that you're going to win 100% of your games with it in the tournament, or there's no guarantee that you can. So when I design an opening repertoire, I'm not just asking myself, what can I win a chess game with? I'm asking myself, what can I win tournaments with? You know, if I play an opening and my opponent just happens to know all the theory, I don't want to lose the game. I want to still be in it. Okay, so that brings me to my 3 recommendations. If you like to play positions like this, and everything that I just said about the Stafford Gambit that you like, that you know and love, but you want to do that from a fundamentally sound position, here's some things you can try. Okay, so the first opening that I'm going to recommend is one for white. And it's actually much easier to have this kind of strategy with white than black. So this comes out of e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6. I'm going to recommend the 4 knights. I know, right? The boring 4 knights. What could we possibly do to make this opening trappy and aggressive? I'm going to suggest something that I guarantee you've never thought of to make this opening super trappy and super aggressive. I'm going to recommend a move that looks really passive on the surface. A3. This was a recommendation that was written about in a book called SOS, Secrets of Opening Surprises. I think they published this probably about 15 years ago or so. And they talked about this move A3. This is also a move that's been played at some of the highest levels. This is something where you can find 2500s playing 2500s with this move A3. It's not just a trappy move, it's a really sophisticated trappy move. So one of the ideas is, if you were going to play something like, say, the Scotch 4 knights, if you were going to play d4, e takes d4, knight takes d4, black would simply play bishop takes b4, and we think this position is equal, or maybe even a little bit better for black, because black is putting all of this pressure on the e4 pawn, and he's ready to castle. So black is actually doing pretty good here. So the idea is, if we want to get this center and we want to get our play, because notice we got a lot of stuff that's very Stafford-like going for us here. We have freedom of development of our pieces. We have more space. We have an aggressive center position. These are things we know and love. We want this type of thing in our openings so that we can get these big attacks and we can attack the black king and get these great games. But how do we do this without ending up with a bad position? Well, we throw in the move A3. And then if they play something like, say, bishop e7, now we play d4, and now there is no bishop b4. We get our center and we get to keep it. Okay, so that's one reason, is we're threatening to play d4, and we're threatening to get that big center and play that aggressive attacking position that we want, right? So the other thing that we're threatening to do here, and this is kind of tricky, is not only are we threatening to play d4 ourselves, we're threatening to meet it if they play d5. If they're like, you know what, you're not being aggressive, so I'm going to be aggressive. We can take, and now we get to play bishop b5, and we get to play the position that they were going to play. But we get to play it in reverse, and now we're controlling the b4 square, which can only be advantageous to us, this having this a3 thrown in. And this position should probably be better for white as well. Okay, so we get to do to them what they were going to do to us. Okay, so then finally, the last appealing thing is a lot of people will fall for this trap. Yes, there's a trap here. a3 is a trappy move. They might play the move bishop c5, just developing a piece. And now we can play kind of our beginner move here. We can play a fork trick. We can play knight takes e5, knight takes e5, d4, and take the whole center of the board away from black. And then after bishop d6, my recommendation is just to keep going with the center. Because we've controlled the b4 square, and they didn't have the move bishop b4, and they don't have it at any point, we can actually get away with f4. And then after knight c6, e5. And we can take away the whole middle away from black. Right? And this is a huge attack for the material. And I want you to see how much further you can take this, actually. So after bishop e7, you have two choices here. You have the move d5, which was played by Patrick Wolf against Lessange in 1993 in Montreal. So these are like 2,500 players, right, playing the move d5. They're playing this position. He won with the white pieces. So this is a legitimate opening. You can play d5 in this position, and you can keep playing for a win. The other option is you can simply take your piece at this point. You can play e takes f6, bishop f6, and then you can just play d5 now, gaining your space. Queen e7 check, play king f2. Now, what's really cool about this position is you have huge attack, and you have a very easy plan to follow. You're threatening rook e1 that pins the queen to the king. This forces castle's kingside. And now you know exactly where your target is. You know that his king is located here. That makes the rest of your moves pretty simple. You're going to bring this rook to the open file, and you're going to have an attack against this king that might involve bringing the queen over and lifting the rook. And I want you to see exactly how you would conduct this here. So you'd bring the rook in, and then you would play this move, d6. You'd play the sacrifice. And now we're ready to bring everything in, and we're going to keep these pieces locked down. We're going to keep the bishop and the rook locked down, and this queen side is going to be undeveloped permanently. And we're going to have this really simple, aggressive attacking plan. So now after knight e6, we're going to play knight d5, and say bishop d4 check. We're going to play bishop e3, because if they exchange, we're just bringing our pieces into the attack faster. So let's just give a sample variation here if they exchange. Now, in the game between Nanu and Kozanov, queen h4 check was actually played. So I'll just show you that game real quick. So it went queen h4 check, g3. I mean, actually, king g1. g3 is also, well, g3 isn't possible because queen h2. So he had to play king g1, and then bishop e3, rook e3. And his queen is actually in the line of fire here. We have to worry about this. So he had to play h6 to defend his h7 pawn because there was an immediate threat. And then white continued with g3. That queen had to go all the way back home. f5 got played, cd6, f6, just breaking open the position of the black king. g6, queen d2, aiming at the weak h6 pawn. So we're going after this guy now via x-ray. And this game actually ended in 3 more moves. King here, g4, pawn up, rook h3, black resigned. We're simply threatening queen takes h6, queen h8 mate, and black can't stop it. So queen h4 didn't seem to be much of a help, but after bishop e3, bishop takes e3 check wouldn't have been very helpful either. We could have played rook e3, again threatening to bring this rook into the kingside attack in a very beginner way. And then let's say they take, we could actually sacrifice and attack this way, bringing our queen in with h5, playing rook h3, and this is another way that we could beat a lot of amateur players just coming after this mate. Now, they play f6. They're making some running room. It's okay. We got more stuff. We can play f5. We can start cutting them off. And then here's the idea. If they were to, say, retreat their knight, we can check and bring our queen to the g6 square, which, because of our beautifully placed knight, this king is going to have to go back here. We can threaten mate again. They're going to have to defend it. They don't have another choice. They don't even have queen e7 because our knight's protecting that square. And then we shuffle our queen back, and that's going to be mate, and they can't stop it. So we're going to be mating them, pretty much no matter what they do. I guess they can play g6, and they get mated into. We can take, and that's mate. So, or actually, we could still play rook h8, queen h7 as mate. It's just a preference at that point. Okay, so that is novelty number one. That's not novelty, but it's opening number one that I think is better than the Stafford. We can play this A3 move, this SOS, this secret of opening surprises move, right? So what are some other things we can do? We want to know what to do with black, right? What are we going to do with the black pieces to spice things up and get these aggressive positions where we know where everything is supposed to go and we can get a great game? Well, you want something with e5, right? So after e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, let's say they play the Ruy Lopez. Well, one of my favorite openings when I was younger, and a favorite of a lot of young players, was after a6 and they play the exchange variation. We take back with the d pawn. Notice the pawn structure? Does that look a little Stafford-esque to you? It's the same pawn structure, except we're not down a pawn. So our position isn't fundamentally found. As a matter of fact, when they threaten to take our pawn, we actually put a small amount of effort into defending it. And in this case, I recommend defending it by creating a pin. We create this pin, and then when they try to break the pin, we hold our bishop with our pawn. This is called the fishing pole trap, right? But more importantly, look at black's position. Black's plan is really straightforward. We're going to come after, this king side. We're going to bring in our pieces, and we have a really straightforward plan to basically just come after this white king and just play for mate, right? We're going to play stuff like queen f6, bishop d6, knight e7, knight g6, knight f4. We're just going to play for mate. And all the while, we're going to be like, hey, if you want to take my bishop on g4, go ahead. Because if he does take the bishop on g4, then life gets really simple, because now we have this open h file, and now we're playing for mate in the simplest possible form, right? So here, and then we're just going to play queen h4, f3, g3, and I guess they would have to resign here, because once they move their knight, we have mate on h1. Right? So that's opening number two. It's like the Stafford, but I'm not down a pawn. It's the same pawn structure. So I can play a6 against Ruy Lopez, I can play the exchange variation, and then I can just play this pin variation with the fishing pole. And this opening has been played by guys like Alexei Shirov with the black pieces. So you know it's sound. We've seen this opening happen on the 2700 level. Right, they've played this bishop to g4 move. It's not an unsound move. It's not something crazy. It's not quirky. It's not something where if your opponent just knows his theory really, really well with white, black's position is going to be lost. If your opponent knows his theory really, really well, you're going to be just fine. Okay, so the final recommendation that I have is one of my personal favorite openings, and it's also a personal favorite opening of a lot of 2,500 plus grandmasters, okay? So that opening is c4, c5, and then after knight f3, knight f6, d4, cd4, knight takes d4, I recommend a gambit that bears the name of Garry Kasparov, the Kasparov Gambit. Okay, what we do is we play e5, knight b5, and then we play d5, and we give them this pawn. We let them play c takes d5. Now, we can't take our pawn back, so it almost looks like we just made a mistake, because we can't play knight takes d5, because if we do, they're going to play queen takes d5, queen takes d5, knight c7 check, and they're going to be up material at the end of all of this. Okay, and we do not want that. So we don't want to be down material, so we simply cannot take this pawn on d5. So why in the world did we just play e5 and d5 if we can't get our pawn back? Well, it's for the same reason that we play any other gambit, is we get this freedom of development. We get an easy plan to follow. And in this case, it's really straightforward. So like, let's say black starts off with bishop c5. Now this is the first part of our easy plan to follow. We're basically going to put our bishop on c5. A lot of times this pawn will advance and gain a little space. It'll go to e4. We'll castle. We'll put our queen on e7 and our rook on d8, or we'll put our rook on e8. We're going to play bishop f5 to hold our pawn, and then we're going to play knight d7, knight b6, and eventually take on d5. That's our plan. It's really straightforward. But not only is this plan really straightforward, this plan can lead to some really great results. So let's say they play the immediate e3. We can castle, and then knight on 5 to c3. We can play e4, bishop e2, rook e8, a3, knight on b to d7, just following through with our plan. Knight b6, knight d5, yay, we got our pawn back. Knight takes d5, knight takes d5, castles. And now we've got our pawn back, we've got more space, and we're going to start conducting an attack against this white king. And the attack almost just plays itself. We're going to develop our piece, and we're going to bring our queen over to g5. And then look at this, look at all of our pieces. In the middle of the board, developed, we're not even down a pawn. Right? So now we've got our Stafford Gambit-like attack. We're laughing at white's pieces, and we're not even down a pawn anymore. You know, queen c2, bishop h3. We're conducting the beginner's attack. And this isn't happening between beginners. This is a game played between Stura and Julian Hodgson. This is a 25-40 and a 26-25. It was played in Tilburg back in 1993. And black won this game. Julian Hodgson won this game, and he won it. He made it look easy. After g3, he just plays h5, just continuing to play for an attack. b4, bishop f8. h4, just continuing to play for an attack. Bishop e1, he takes, just breaking through. Knight comes back to f6, he exchanges. White's just desperately trying to get the pieces off the board here because he's losing. Bishop c3, see, he allows him to take a good post for his knight, and he's just trying to bring his knight here and trying to bring his knight into the f3 square. So then after bishop to d4, bishop d6, king f1, we're going to exchange, we're going to play rook d2, and that was a wrap. White finally decided to resign here because there's actually too many threats of mate. We have queen h3 as a threat, followed by knight f3 would be game over. So like, let's just say random move, right? We would play queen h3, and then if king here, this is mate. Right? So white's position was totally hopeless. Black got this easy attack. He had easy places to put his pieces, and it was an easy position to follow. And you know what? These aren't the only 3 openings that are like this. There's actually a lot of openings like this, where you can play a trappy opening, where the positions are fundamentally sound, your opponent can fall for tricks, and you don't have to sacrifice a pawn potentially unsoundly, and you don't have to lose games just because your opponent looked up the theory 10 minutes before the game started. So anyways, I hope you liked this video. I hope you learned something new about chess. If you do like this video and you like some of my other content, please subscribe. Thank you very much for watching.